Cat Goes Fishing is the critically acclaimed best and only game involving a cat going fishing, receiving many wonderful reviews for its relaxing gameplay. Now I know the number one question on most of your minds is, how on earth do I catch all these stupid fish? Well, today I'll be explaining that to you and how to catch all the huge fish in Cat Goes Fishing. Now the first step in obtaining any of the large fish is that you first need to obtain a huge hook. In order to do this, hook yourself a small or medium fish and then have the shark come over, bite your hook, and drag it over for a while. After this, you'll notice that you'll get a notification telling you that you have just unlocked the huge hook, as you can see here. Speaking of which, the first fish on our list is going to be the shark. In order to catch the shark, make sure that you buy a huge hook before casting your line in. After you do that, hook yourself a medium fish and drag it over to the shark. The shark will get attracted to the medium fish and will try to eat it, but thankfully you have the huge hook now, and you'll notice that he'll start struggling with you unlike normal when he just tries to pull the line away. Whenever he starts struggling with you, he's going to fight you in waves, so it's recommended that while he's fighting you, you tap on the mouse so that he doesn't get too far, and that when he relaxes, that you just start reeling him in. It's going to take a while for you to get him, and it's going to take a lot of perseverance in order to catch him, especially if you're using one of the lower end rods and don't have as many upgrades as you would have later on, since this is probably going to be the first huge fish that you're going to catch. As long as you remember not to get too greedy and to keep an eye on your line to make sure it doesn't get too red and to make sure that the noise that the line makes doesn't get too high pitched, you should be fine in catching this guy. Also remember that when he gets close to the surface, he may try to fight you again, and let him do it. If you try to fight him, even if he looks like he's about to come onto the boat, you risk losing him and then end up having to do the entire thing over again, and it's just not worth it. The next fish on our list is a tiger shark. In order to catch the tiger shark, you're going to need to be able to get the first boat, because you'll find the tiger shark somewhere around the middle of the ocean. In order to catch him, you're going to be able to move out a little bit. In order to hook him, all you need to do is get yourself a huge bait and a huge hook, and you'll be able to catch him as soon as he shows up. Now, like the shark, he's going to fight you in waves, but the tiger shark is a lot more difficult than the shark is. He's going to fight for a lot longer than the shark, on top of the fact that it'll be a lot more difficult to reel him in general. He'll do a lot more damage to your line, and you have to be extra careful whenever you're working with this guy. I recommend getting one of the newer rods and a couple of gauge upgrades before you try to tackle this guy. Just like with the shark, even if he's getting close to you and he wants to fight, it's usually safer just to let him fight. If you don't, you risk, again, letting him go, and even if you think it's not worth it, it definitely will be in the long run, because you don't want to have to do that entire thing all over again. Now we're going to skip over them all and head straight to the Noxus real quick. Noxus is a really annoying fish that shows up only during the night. You'll notice that if you have a fish on your hook at that moment, Noxus will show up and pull the fish away, aiding him in his escape away from you. He'll do this multiple times, and he might even loop into it, so it'd be really careful whenever you're fishing at night. If you want to catch Noctis himself, all you have to do is get yourself a huge bait with a huge hook. Now once you actually hook Noctis, you're going to notice that he's actually considerably weaker than the tiger shark. This guy is apparently more intelligent than he is fierce, and you shouldn't have too many problems actually getting him up onto your boat once you've caught him, and you shouldn't need too many upgrades in order to get him. Now, a lot of people have had a lot of difficulty trying to catch them all in the past just because of how obscure it is to try and catch him. In order to catch them all, get yourself any kind of bait and a huge hook. Just hook yourself the bullfish that he tends to chase after, and he'll bite your hook. After that, just reel him in. You'll notice that of all the fish that you've tried to catch so far, he is probably going to be the toughest one. So I recommend that you prepare amply with your rods and upgrades before you try and tackle this guy, especially since occasionally his spawn time is going to be kind of long. Just like the other fish, this guy's going to try and fight you in waves. But the waves aren't going to be nearly as obvious as they were with the other fish, and you may not even notice them in the first place. You'll definitely notice when he starts slacking on the line, however this does not mean that he's completely tired out. He'll probably try to fight you again, especially once he gets near the surface. So again, make sure that you use the utmost caution whenever you're against this guy. Now if you ever have difficulty actually finding them all, you can generally find him towards the middle to shore. At the bottom of the ocean, usually chasing around the bullfish since that's where he's usually at. Occasionally he'll rise just a bit higher, just above the deep ocean, but for the most part you're going to find him down in the depths. If you're not using the radar, then you'll definitely know that you found him once you start hearing the little popping noises that he makes whenever he eats a bullfish. It'll be something that you've never heard before, and if you hear that noise, then you're definitely around him. Now sometimes occasionally you notice that the maw is going to have a fish actually stuck in his mouth. In order to catch him, all you have to do is hook that fish in his mouth, and after you do that, it'll be no problem. Now the final fish that we're going to catch is the Mogo, which is the most difficult and valuable of all the fish in the game. In order to catch him, you're going to find him somewhere in the middle of the ocean, and if you'll notice, if you go farther out and you have a radar, he's actually going to follow your boat, and he's going to be the fish that seems to be constantly swimming up and down at the bottom of the ocean. In order to actually hook him, you're going to need to use a huge hook and a large bait, and you have to make sure that you are not using the light bulb at all, which is why it's important to either have the radar or a good sense that he's following your boat, because otherwise you won't be able to catch him. He'll just avoid your bait entirely. Now when you start pulling him out of the depths, it may be a little bit difficult to see your line, so just use the noise in order to figure out how close you are to breaking. When you're actually pulling this guy in, you're going to notice something really different about him compared to all the fish that we've talked about today, and it's that he does not tire out at all. Chances are whenever you catch this guy, it's going to be a 10-minute click fest, because all you're going to have to do is keep on clicking in order to get the balance between reeling him in and making sure that he does not break your line. It's going to feel like pulling him out of the depths is going to be really easy, but as you get closer to the surface, he will get more and more difficult to pull, and sometimes you feel like you won't be making any progress at all. Something I personally did to gauge how close he was to the surface was that I went over to the shore, and depending on where the cowfish and the mustard fish were, it told me how close he was getting to the boat. Now, it is extremely important that you have the right tools in order to catch this guy. You're going to need at least the master rod, and the first time I caught him, I was using 4 gauges. I tried to catch him using 2 gauges, and it took me about half an hour to get him almost onto my boat, but unfortunately he broke the line before he did, and it was way too difficult. So make sure you get like at least that much before you try and catch this guy. I've said before, and it's even more important here than ever before, you have to be patient when you're catching this guy. It's going to feel like you're not making any progress at all. Just keep going, you'll get it eventually, even if it's going to suck, because it will. Especially if you're not using the best gear, it's going to feel like you're clicking forever. Just make sure that whenever you're fighting this guy, you keep attention to that line, because your attention is probably going to slip when you're fighting him. It did when I was, and if you do, there's a chance that your line might break, so just be careful about that. Once he starts getting really close to your boat, as you can see here, it's going to feel like that you're going to be able to pull him in, and I have to make sure to warn you guys that this is extremely dangerous to do. Just keep on clicking, but do not be tempted to hold the line, because if you do, there's a chance that he's going to break it, and there's nothing worse than losing this guy right before he gets onto your boat. Now, because you're going to be clicking a lot, when you finally get him, make sure you notice when you actually pull him out of the water, because you don't want to accidentally cast him back out. So just go ahead and hold the line once you pull him out, so that you just drop him behind you onto your boat or onto land. Well, that's how to catch all the 5 huge fish in Cat Goes Fishing. If you guys like this video, go ahead and tell me, because I'll be more than happy to make guides to show you guys how to catch all the large, medium, and small fish. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I also hope that you guys have fun catching yourself some big ass fish.